Hello and welcome to the Bible K through 12. This is third grade Bible part B. It will be a session without a face. I'm going to be off camera and you are going to be seeing what is before you right now, which is a model of Solomon's temple. It's a little bit of a crude model. I think it's fairly close to scale, and that was one of my goals as I worked through putting it together. My artistic and handiwork skills are not highly rated, but I am hoping that this will give you some concept of what Solomon's temple looked like and how it functioned. One of the things that you need to understand as you look at this temple model and think about Solomon's temple, and that is, it is not what it's like to go to church. Most of you have gone to a church service, and you know that you go in the front doors. You can sort of see some front doors right here, and you find a bench or pew and have a seat and participate in a worship service. Worship in that day was quite different. People didn't go into the temple for worship. The only people who were allowed into the temple were the priests. The people stood in courtyards some distance away watching the activity of the priests during times of worship. Now, worship in that day often involved burning things, either burning animal sacrifices or incense. Those were the two main ways that things were burned, or things that were burned. In the case of animal sacrifices, there was a large altar, which was the designation for a place to burn things in worship. There was a large altar outside the temple, and animals were sacrificed. They were killed, dismembered in various ways according to the nature of the particular sacrifice, and put on the fire of the altar and burned up. Their blood was collected and splashed down at the bottom of the altar. Notice that this did not take place inside the temple. In the temple, there were two rooms. The holy place and the most holy place, which is also called the Holy of Holies. And the priest entered the holy place, and in that room there was an altar of incense, so that hot coals were there and incense could be poured out and make a kind of a sweet smelling savor in worship of God. In addition, there was one or more lamps that were kept burning, and priests attended to those lamps, trimmed them, made sure that there was fuel, and so that they kept burning night and day. And finally, there was an altar where bread was laid out, loaves of bread, and this was another way of worshiping God, as if to offer the Lord food. And in some cases, the priests ate some of that bread as an act of worship. All of this took place in this outer room, the holy place. None of it was seen by the people. They just sort of had to imagine that this is what was going on. Now, the most holy place was not entered by anyone, including priests, except one day a year, the high priest entered the most holy place. When he did so, he came with some blood, and he put that on the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was the main item of furniture in the most holy place. It was a box that contained the Ten Commandments and a few other items, and it had a very ornate covering that included cherubim, angel-like beings carved in gold. Their wings kind of arched back over themselves to the point that they touched one another. And so this was where the blood was sprinkled. It was sprinkled on that lid of the Ark of the Covenant. And that was the only act of worship that was done. The high priest first sprinkled blood for himself, signifying that his sins were covered by this blood, and then another offering of blood was made for the people. And as I say, that only happened once a year. That day was called the Day of Atonement. Now, if we talk a little bit about this interior, the two rooms are not symmetrical. The holy place is 40. We'll talk about dimensions in a minute. And the most holy place is 20 long. Both are 20 wide, and the holy place is 30 high, and the most holy place is 20 high. Now the dimension is cubit, C-U-B-I-T, which ordinarily was 18 inches or about. This cubit that was used in the temple was the long cubit, which was 21 inches. So the total dimension of 40 plus 20, the length, made a total of 60 cubits, which is 105 feet. Notice that the most holy place was 20 by 20 by 20, 20 wide, 20 high, and 20 long, so it was a perfect cube. Now, a little interesting tidbit is exactly how was that dimension of height accommodated for. And there are two ideas. The most common idea is that there was a sort of false ceiling here, making sort of like a crawl space above the ceiling of the most holy place. The other idea is that when the priest entered the most holy place, he stepped up so that the the floor was raised, and this brought the high priest closer to the ceiling so that it amounted to a 20-foot ceiling rather than a 30-foot ceiling. No one really knows. No one really knows. Was there some sort of barrier across here above the most holy place, dividing that crawl space, as I call it, from the area above the holy place? These are little details that are not known. Now, as for the entrances, the outer entrance through the porch and through the into the holy place by way of doors, there are doors described into the most holy place, but there are in other places mention of a veil or curtain that divided these two rooms. It's possible that both were present, and that the priest sort of pushed the curtain back a little bit and then went through the door. Whatever the case, there was this division between holy place and most holy place. Outside, there is a porch, and it probably had some sort of roof over it, but that's really not mentioned. There are two columns that are mentioned and given names. The Boaz and Jachin columns, 18 cubits high. Whether there were some sort of additional structures above those columns besides some sort of a roof structure, all of those details are really not known. It's just known that they had names. What the meaning of those names was, no one knows. It is perhaps coincidental that this one was called Boaz, which was also the name of the ancestor of David and Solomon. Boaz married Ruth, and from that line came Jesse, the father of David, and then of course David was the father of Solomon. If there's any relationship between this column and that man Boaz, it's not known. Now, one other tidbit about the structure of the temple, and that is, first of all, I have cut away the wall to a great degree here so that you can see the interior. But this was, of course, a solid wall. And outside that wall, there were some structures that were built up along the wall. Oddly, each one as you went up was wider, so that the top one was the widest, and the middle one was middlemost, and then the bottom one was the most narrow, just sort of the opposite of what you'd expect. Exactly what these functioned as is not known. They seemed to be storage rooms, possibly places where certain items were prepared for worship, and possibly they functioned as sort of like offices or meeting places for the priests and perhaps other people. I have always thought that they were an odd add-on to the temple and sort of spoiled its simplicity, but they were necessary and they were there, and that's that. Now, this is I hope helpful for you to get some notion of the structure of Solomon's temple, which was a very important item in the religious life of the nation, a place of worship, and really a place that you even find people singing its praises in the Psalms, because it was just considered so beautiful, so intriguing. It had a way of enticing people to worship and evoking a worshipful attitude. So that is the Solomon's Temple, which will be hopefully in the back of your mind as we continue this series. I want to always say that I am grateful to those of you who do watch these videos. You inspire me, you encourage me, the fact that you watch, and I hope that they are helpful to you. I want to say a word of apology that I have not given you biblical references for the material that I've gone over. And so it's my goal to sit down and just make a list of all these scriptures that I have kind of nodded to, in some cases based a good part of my lecture on, and so that they will be available to you so that you can open the Bible and read some of this material for yourself. And I hope that is something that will be helpful to you. I'm going to post it online, and I will in some way communicate that to you through the videos, so that the material in the past as well as going forward will be available to you. Again, thank you for watching. I hope that it is helpful to you as you begin to deepen your understanding of what the scriptures are all about. So I hope that you will come back and watch the next video. Thank you very much.